Hi everyone, my name is Amy Tomasevicz and I am from Columbus. I am a retired art teacher of 43 years and a practicing artist, and it was my pleasure to judge your wonderful show that you have here from the Fremont Artist Group. Great variety of pieces and a lot of really well done pieces, so kudos to your group for that kind of presentation. After much deliberation and back and forth, I picked this piece here called The End is the Beginning as the best of show. And I think what struck me, and I kept coming back to it, is the uniqueness of how she's layered the two canvases and two pieces together. And they're both like individual paintings, and yet they work so well together. Both very organic. The bottom one almost seems like little, I'm going to say amoebas because I'm not a biology major. But then of course these are the dandelion fluffs, and it seems like I'm lying on the ground looking upward through the dandelion, which is a very fun kind of viewpoint. It would have been easy to use bright yellows and bright greens and so forth with the dandelions, but I enjoy the color palette and how restful it is, and yet it draws your eye in with that summery kind of orange color. So nice job on that one. This piece is called Out to Pasture, and obviously we've all driven along and seen abandoned vehicles out in the pasture, which is kind of sad, but yet they're really interesting because of all the things that nature and the weather has done to them. This being a prime example of all the rust on the roof and the broken glass, and looks almost like a bird is starting to build a nest in the window area there. So it takes a special eye to appreciate the beauty of this moment out in nature. I like it because from across the room I see this blue and orange complementary color scheme, which has always intrigued me. And of course the rust is the orangey, and then the blue could be the original paint color, or it could be reflecting some of the sky or anything that's around it. And the fact that this artist chose to have it printed on brush metal, I thought was a unique approach to it also, because you're putting metal on metal, and that made it kind of fun. Cut Flowers, which is a watercolor, has a beautiful range of values. I mean, just look at this zinnia right here in the front, and all of the color variations of that same, all the value variations, I should say, of the same color, which is not easy to do, especially with watercolor. So I found that very interesting and handled very well. I also enjoyed just little touches like the texture of the twine compared to the smooth glass and the softness of the flower petals. And I think this artist did a very good job in portraying that. There's a good path of interest that leads your eye through the painting, starting with the twine and kind of leads you around. This sort of stops you a little bit and then come back down in this area. So the paths of interest were very well developed. I have a suggestion for this corner up in here, though, possibly. I felt that corner was just a little bit flat and intense. And it looks like the artist has started to do a little lifting of color out of there. So maybe if you could just put some little innuendos of some shapes or something back there that make us wonder, well, what else is beyond this too, instead of just cutting our eye off there. But beautiful use of colors and textures in that one. This pastel drawing is a very interesting point of view because, excuse me, I feel like I've just walked into the bar or I'm sitting there looking out at the group that's playing at the bar, and I assume the group is called Knuckleheads. But the way that the point of view is caught my eye when I was first looking at it. Normally I'm not a fan of black matting, but I think the matting in this case adds to the ambiance of the kind of dark bar and the closed-in space, because the frame and the matting definitely do box it in and make it a very tight kind of thing. I like the choice of colors. I think the color palette adds to the feeling of nighttime activity in a dark bar without being crazy, because with purples and greens and turquoise and magentas and all those colors that are present there, it would be easy to get lost in all of that color palette. And this is all very harmonious and well placed. Okay. All right, this beautiful photograph is called Here I Come, which is quite an appropriate title. And I think what caught me first on this is, number one, the presentation. I enjoyed the use of the rough wood in the frame, which echoed the wood on the barn door, and then the kind of weathered white wood echoing again the white wood that's in the barn door. So it's all very cohesive. I know you're not supposed to notice the frame first, but to me it looks like a one unit presentation, so good job on that. Here comes the kitty cat from the black hole, and I like how the space is divided. You have a large, a medium, and a small space, even though the small is long. And so it's asymmetrically balanced and very well done as far as holding your attention. The detail on the kitty, the focus is on the head. You can see those sharp claws hanging onto the barn door and the whiskers, and yet the back end of the cat just fades away and gets blurry. So I like that definition on the front of the cat. Okay, Front Door with Flowers is a watercolor that just makes you feel very happy when you look at it because of all the pretty colors and the beautiful flowers that we're all ready to see right now and the pretty greens and things. It would be so easy to get really tied up with detail in this piece. You've got all of these flowers and leaves and things that are all different. You've got the texture of the wood, the pattern of the shadows on the building, but yet this all seems to kind of work together. And I think that's due to the way they've managed the light spaces throughout the piece, rather than have just one super dark area. The light helps carry my eye around. And also the architecture of the building. You've got the light post that goes up to the building rooftop, and then that comes down on the side of it, and then the fence, the porch railing helps bring your eye back to it. So you have that movement for your eye around the composition. This one is called Spring Pond, and it's done with oil on canvas. When you look at a landscape like this, one of the most difficult things, I think, is to control all the greens and yet make them believable. And this artist did a very good job of having dark greens and spring greens and olive greens all working together cohesively, without having one area jump out too much at you. That's a difficult thing to do. Just a little bit of reflection in the pond, and then the interest of all of the fallen branches and things there helps draw your eye to that focal point, as well as his or her use of the yellows and the light greens off to the left of the reflection. So right away you can see the middle ground area tends to be the focal point, which is not often the case. Often it's in the foreground. But good use of receding greens and keeping your eye throughout the composition. Our next piece is called Buckled, and it's made out of clay and found pieces. And as the name indicates, there's a variety of different kinds of buckles that have been incorporated into what appears to be a whimsical structure. I enjoy the space or the shape that the artist chose to use for the building, because it almost seems like a Chagall kind of building where it's got motion and movement to it. And then the colors and the textures all work very cohesively together. The use of wire for the smoke coming out of the chimney is fun. And I think all the pieces that this artist has chosen to use have a very harmonious color palette with the coppers and golds and kind of pewter colors. Okay, Blueberry Brewer Altar Covered Assemblage Collage has quite a name there for a long name for a little piece, but it has a lot of things to look at also. First of all, the color choices that this person used are very, very cohesive. There's a lot of darks, but yet she's accented those, or he has accented those darks with some iridescent colors, some greens, that are repeated in other parts of the assemblage, and also some coppers and golds and things. Repetition of the berry shape also adds to carrying your eye throughout the piece. Clear around up between the birds, there are some wooden beads, and that's echoed down on the bottom. And then the painted pieces on the side columns reflect, or repeat, I should say, the pattern pieces up on the top arch. So it was all very carefully planned and thought out as to how they were going to carry your eye through that. But when you stand in front of it, the thing that amazed me is how much depth the artist has been able to portray on just a flat surface. It looks like you could crawl in that little frame and just keep going and going and going through a little landscape that they've created. So it's a piece that really does hold your piece and makes your attention and makes you want to come back and view it again and again. First Fish is a pastel painting, and I imagine this little girl that's shown in the picture is a very special person to the artist because of the attention to detail and the wonderful expression that's on this little girl's face. Might be her first fish, or it might be her 50th fish, but she's just as proud of it as she can be. I think the artist chose to use just the right amount of detail in the background and so forth, so that the little girl stands out away from everything without being too garish. And also, I think the artist captured the moment very well with the expression on the face. You know that it was a candid shot or something that happened right at that moment, and it's fun to be a part of that experience. Would I Like Fries is a collage, mixed media and acrylic, and I love the use of the pun in the title of it, because to me titling and pricing artwork are the two most difficult things. The creation of it seems to come easier, but this is a great title for this piece. Good skill with values in creating all of those ins and outs that he wants you to see. What's deep, what's in the shadow, what's coming toward us, and the perspective of some of those fries and the pieces of wood. You can tell right away that they're coming toward your vision or away from it, or what angle they're supposed to be at. I think the use of those values holds your interest all the way throughout the canvas. There's kind of a light spot over on the right by some ketchup, and then that helps lead your eye into the more golden fries and things throughout the whole piece. And again, there's a landscape there that wants to carry your eye way back in the distance, so that's a fun part of the whole painting. Okay, this acrylic is called Redhead in a Gray Hat, which is a pretty obvious title, but there are so many things in that painting that are not obvious. There's a wonderful subtle use of pattern throughout the whole piece, all across the canvas, that helps carry your eye through it, and also the repetition of the color, the red hair, which is not an easy color to carry through a piece without it jumping off of the canvas and saying, "Look at me, look at me." It's very subtly done and nicely done. And then the figures in the background are suggested figures rather than detailed figures. And that contrasts, of course, to the face of the lady who looks like she's seen some of the world and knows what it's all about through her expression on her face and her jewels hanging from her red curly hair and so forth. She looks like somebody I'd like to sit and visit with. Okay, this pencil piece is called Consoling. And of course, right away, you know what the title refers to, because there's this wonderful moment captured between the adult and the baby. It looks like she's saying, "Now listen here, this is the way it's going to be, and you're going to do what I say," kind of thing, but in a very nurturing way, of course. The pencil is a nice choice of medium because it adds to the scene without taking away from it, and you don't get so wrapped up in color and so forth. There's a hint of color suggested in the background, but most of the beauty in this piece is through the detail and the craftsmanship of the drawing. The texture of the fur, this little bit of the hand out here where it's suggested, but yet you don't know for sure what's happening. I have one little suggestion, and I might say put a little more dark value right under here to help separate this area from this area. Up here it works, here it gets a little bit lost, and that would be my only suggestion on that. Okay, the magical flying pumpkin machine is certainly an unexpected subject matter that I didn't think I'd find in judging this art show. I've seen pieces done with gourds and so forth, but this is a fun piece. Also, the way the artist has juxtaposed the human figures with the very mechanical kinds of things and the very organic things makes it really interesting to look at and think about how those pieces could work together as one unit, which they seem to do here. But it becomes a very imaginative piece to look at from all different angles. I like the lack of color because I think it would have been easy to get carried away with the color, where by using very little color, the emphasis is on the texture and a little bit of the pattern and so forth that's through here. I mean, we have things from beads to screws to pins, ballpoint pen springs, and then these little things inside of the areas that are peeking through. So you just keep finding more and more things to look at on this piece. That Some Pig is an acrylic painting, and again we have a muted color palette here, but the muted color palette in this case I think adds to the contrast that she or he has put on the lit side of the head of the pig, and that helps you be able to see those bristly little hog whiskers that stick out and the whiskers on the bottom of the ear and so forth, and how the light is passing through the ear. Had there been brighter colors and some of those same colors in the background, that would have all gotten lost. I like the fact that you don't have to see the whole pig in order to appreciate that it is indeed a pig and he's out in the mud and having a good time. But I think it was a good capture of that particular moment there. Okay, this pencil drawing is called The James, and I'm assuming that it refers to the sitter, whose name might be James, but he is the James and not just plain old James. And the artist has managed to capture a very candid moment when the sitter was reaching up to adjust his glasses or giving a gesture talking about something. So it doesn't seem at all posed, and it's like we're in that moment with the sitter and the artist also. His looking out at us engages us and makes us want to find out what's happening there a little bit. I think that his chin gets just a little bit lost in there, so I might suggest some more value work on underneath the chin. But overall, very nice use of cohesive values. Curious is another pencil drawing, but this one is extremely detailed and intensive, careful use of values, all the way from the darkest dark to the lightest light. And by doing that, they have allowed us to be able to see the wrinkles in the cowhide and the eyelashes on their beautiful eyes and the wetness of the nose and some of those things that you wouldn't be able to see if you had just skimmed over some of those values. They also did a great job in the perspective of the cow's head and the position of the cow's head. And this is exactly what cattle do. They'll come as a group and want to see what's going on, so they all kind of push and shove together. But you can tell which one's in front, which one's just kind of working their way in, and then the little one underneath. So the angle of the perspective is very good. The painting or the drawing seems just a little crowded to me in that small frame and matting. I think it would be interesting to see what would happen if it were in a larger mat and frame.